Oh, are we on the air?
Hey, gang, it's Bryan from FXBilliards. Thanks for joining me today for our podcast. I'm here with
Jason, coming to you guys. Glad to be here again from New Jersey. Glad to be on the podcast again with Bryan. So glad to be here, Bryan.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of subjects we wanted to talk about that we think will help you guys out. The first thing I want to talk about is just kind of a shout out to new players. Jason, you kind of consider yourself a new player.
I'm definitely a new player. Less than a year, I would say. So I definitely would fit that mold.
Okay. And, my biggest concern with new players is that they'll give up because of frustration. This is not an easy thing to learn.
It's a frustrating game. I mean, I hear people all the time how they get frustrated with golf. As golf's a very difficult game. Well,
exactly.
Pool is not much easier. I mean, the precision, the practice, the time that it takes to be a good player, it could be monumental. So I could definitely see a lot of people, not wanting to continue after a while. So
yeah, I think I played golf once. About 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah. Once.
Once. Well, I worked for a company at the time that a lot of the guys were golfers and they wanted to have a golf outing. So we used to gamble an awful lot in the office doing things like putting on carpet. And I was really good at that. So when we had our outing, if you know anything about golf, you know what a scramble is. So it's kind of like a team and you're using the best ball. Everybody wanted me on their team because I could putt my ass off in the office. Okay. So once I got on a putting green for the first time, I said, wait a second, this is nothing like the office.
Well, like pool, a lot of people could probably make that easy, simple shot, that straight in shot. But when it comes to either more aggressive shots or using English or anything like that, that's where you see where your game is really at. And that's probably what you experienced when you were out there and you had to drive the ball, 250 yards or something.
Forget about it. If we weren't using, the best ball from the team, I would still be out there.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't think we used it. We used maybe one or two of my putts, but we did not use any of my drives.
Your drives, yeah.
Yeah, none of that happened.
Yeah.
So and there's there's a house that's right off the golf course in Malvern, Pennsylvania. It's been 30 years, but I am sorry about the incident on your porch and the golf ball. So if you guys are watching, that was me. Statute of limitations is passed now.
I'm sure they remember, yeah.
But yeah, so I can relate to. I can't remember too clearly, like the first time I tried to play pool. I was given lessons
young, I'm sure,
very early. So I didn't have the frustration that that a grown person has when they're trying to learn to play pool, which I think is different than with a kid. And I was lucky enough that the first person to teach me to play pool, like, immediately started, the first week he let me and my cousin go nuts. And then the week after that, it was legitimate instruction, which made a big difference because I skipped the frustration part.
How old would you say you were when you first picked up that pool cue?
I had to be 10 or 11 years old, and he was a friend of the family.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because on my train ride home today, it's like I'll watch pool videos or anything like that. Just I have a 1 hour ride, so just to keep myself busy, and I come across this video where I never heard of him before, but this pro called Billy Thorpe was playing this young kid, and the kid could not have been 12 years old.
Willie Mosconi was traveling the country at 12 years old. It's like a circus act. This little kid, and when he first started playing, he was actually standing on milk crate and milk, what do you call them? Milk
Crates.
carts.
Yeah.
Milk crates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he could reach, I guess I don't think they have milk crates. Only DJs know about milk crates anymore, right?
Yeah, our 12-inch records back in the
Exactly.
day.
Exactly. Every DJ has some, but I don't think anybody else in the world does.
They hold up to 150 records, if I remember. Yeah.
Yes, they do. And they're perfectly, it's almost like they were made for,
it was made for it. Yeah.
LPs. But yeah, and some of the younger guys are like, what is this LP thing you speak of? So, but yeah.
Look it up, guys. Look it up.
But yeah, Willie would stand on these things, and actually, I saw a picture of Mosconi, or maybe it was a drawing. I don't remember if it was legit or not. But Mosconi playing with potatoes because his father didn't want him to be a pool player and take the pool balls and hide them. So he was pushing potatoes around the table with the cue. Okay. Learning at a young age is great. Now, of course, the problem, the best thing about learning at a young age is you don't have to unlearn anything. Like when I give people lessons, and even watch myself, by the way, on video, I find myself spending time unlearning a bad habit. So you tend, and you might know all the fundamentals and everything, but you get away from them over time because certain things feel more comfortable to you and you start to drift away. And that's why even professionals get coached, these days. But so the first thing that I do is unteach certain habits that people have gotten or bad information that they've gotten. It is a funny thing because I was probably playing most seriously. Well, the age I started playing most seriously was probably about 14 or 15 when I bought my own little 7-foot pool table. It was a piece of crap, but I, a lot of people would kill for it. It was, what made it crap was that it was made of wood, so it wasn't slate. It was what I could afford. I was 15 years old. I used my Christmas money, and I think I got it from JCPenney or something, and it arrived, and I put the thing together myself, and it was never from day one to time I got rid of it. It was never level. I think it was actually higher in the center of the table because that's why I could never get it level because it was like plywood or whatever. So it had bolts in the center going down the center of the table. And if you tightened them too much, the center of the table started to rise. So the balls would literally, you can't learn a table. If the balls curve to the right, you can learn that table. If they curve both ways, they break like waves in Maui. They go this way and then this way. It takes a new level of skill to know what to do. But I learned a lot on those tables and on that table. And that table actually took me into, playing in Center City, Philadelphia for money. I mean, I spent so many hours, on that table. But it was funny because I was kind of like I wouldn't say I was a prodigy because I was far from being a prodigy, but I was this, 15, 16-year-old kid that could play pool better than most grown men. So my cousins would bring their friends over and I would play with my cousins because my cousins, most of them were like 20 years older than you. Yeah. Okay. And they would bring their friends over and I'd play them. And then they would always give me advice. Oh, you gotta do this when you shoot. You gotta do that. And looking back on it, they clearly were trying to screw up my game because the things that they were telling me to do were just ridiculous. Luckily, I had enough instruction by then to figure out, I don't know if that guy does this, but it doesn't work. So anyway, but yeah, new players need to understand that it's going to be a frustrating game. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And of course, it's just, but the important thing I think is to have fun, pay attention to the videos and books and whatever you get involved in early in the game so that you have a foundation and you don't have somebody unteaching you later on.
There's a lot more material today, where you can learn a lot easier than it was 20 years ago. Whether it's books, whether it's, obviously I learned a lot from obviously working with you, but also I just watch pros sometimes. I could sit down, watch a couple of videos, and I could say, you know what, that's interesting. That, and I try to bring that to the table. Sometimes you'll pick up a lot.
Yeah.
Probably many years ago, people didn't even want to show other people how to play really good.
Absolutely not. I was reading a book 2 days ago, and the first chapter, he talks about how people gave him a hard time for writing the book. And, because pool was one of those things that people did not share information with you. There are certain professionals, and this is probably the point in the video where I'll put a little clip of some of the guys I'm talking about, who have fundamental habits that are so out there, that are so bad, that if you try to copy them, you're going to go nuts. You're going to have the worst game, and you're going to look like a scrub in the pool hall. They got by without instruction, because back in the day, when these guys were coming up, there was nobody. There wasn't a lot of coaching. There wasn't a lot of books even. I mean, I think there was like a 20-year gap between pool books after Willie Mosconi wrote one. So if you watch some of the old stuff, I'm gonna pick on Alan Hopkins as an example. World-class Hall of Fame player, won all kinds of titles, one of the greatest players ever. I played with Hopkins. He destroyed me, even at his current age. It was probably 10 years ago that we played, so he was a little younger than he is today. But Alan Hopkins is a good example. One of the best players, and by the way, one of the nicest guys ever. And the CEO of the Super Billiard Expo, which I live by, I think is one of the greatest events, certainly in the Philly area. But if you watch Alan Hopkins and his shots, and
his technique, fundamentals.
It's god awful. I mean, his cue is all over the place, and I would never let a student shoot like that.
Yeah,
but he was one of the greatest players ever. So you have to be careful where you get your.
I played with a guy a couple of weeks ago. I went to a pool hall, and I was playing against a guy, a friend of a friend, who shot like that. I mean, I'm seeing him getting down on his shot, and he looked okay. But once he went to go shoot, his stick would have hit the ceiling if the ceiling was only 10 feet high or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking about a lot of the things that we've talked about and all the videos that I've watched, and I'm like, where did this guy learn how to shoot? But he beat me pretty clearly. I mean,
right.
He did get me, but like his fundamentals were not what we seem to learn, or what we even watch today's pros shoot like. But and he was an older gentleman. He must have been
right. And that's where it really comes in.
Something.
Especially guys like me who are over 45 years old. A lot of the techniques that we learned and stuff like that.
So am I, by the way.
Well, I'm just saying a lot of, but guys that learned way back, even though I had instruction at an early age, by the time I was 16 or 17, my pool instructor, my lone pool instructor at the time, had passed away. So I was pretty much on my own. So even today, I have some god awful habits at the pool table, and I try to break them, but there's certain things that I won't change. Like even when I give lessons, there's certain things that a person might do that doesn't look fundamentally sound. Like if you watch, I love to point out the Asian female players, because they have the most tight fundamentals that you're ever going to see. There's no body movement. There's no elbow drop.
Form.
Yeah, right? There's none of that. So a lot of pros have certain habits that they're not going to try to shake just for you, because you don't get any style points. I have people in the videos all the time saying things like, well, you drop your elbow. Are you supposed to do that? Well, hell yeah, because that's the way I make that shot. That's the way I've done it for well over 30 years. And that's the way a lot of people make that shot. They drop their elbow. Oh, you did this one. This is my favorite. A guy wrote me and said, I like your videos, but you don't hold the cue properly. I'm like, what I don't hold the cue. It's proper enough that I run racks like crazy. And I go on to read it, and he says, Willie Mosconi says, now Willie Mosconi's been dead for 45 years. Willie Mosconi says, you should hold the cue 6 to 8 inches behind the balance point. Well, here's the thing. First off, it's funny because you can find a bunch of still photographs of Willie Mosconi holding the cue in the wrong place. And when I say the wrong place, I mean his elbow is totally out of line because he's a guy that was self-taught. Okay. So when he wrote his book, the information he was relaying was what he does. But here's the other rub. I am 8 inches taller than Willie Mosconi was. My point where I hold the cue is much further behind the balance point than Willie Mosconi's would be.
And that makes sense, of course.
Of course. And when you look at guys like Shane and Earl that play with extensions on their cue, look where their hand is. It's at the end of that first part of the cue. They're holding it in the back. Also, it looks like they're holding it at a further point up because the cue is extended by 8 inches. But where your balance point is, this is a message to all you young, not necessarily young, but new players, where your balance point is and where your feet are and whether or not you drop your elbow and things like that is really going to be part of your own style, because you can be a world-class player and do all of those things that our little robot ladies.
Right.
I hate to pick on them because I love every single one of them, but you know what I'm talking about. And
I mean, so some of the greatest guys I've watched on, on channels or on videos. Obviously, we've mentioned, Efren Reyes or Francisco Bustamante. I watched them shoot. Their arm is going like this up and down when their cue is hitting on that ball. It goes. It ain't a perfect. Shane obviously has that great perfect form, smooth, level, straight. But you watch some of the Philippine guys who are some of the best players in the world, but they have a lot of movement. Before they actually stroke that ball. And sometimes I try to mimic it here. I'm like, what am I even trying to do?
No, don't do it.
Just stick to the basics and fundamentals, and you'll be all right in the long run.
Two funny things about that. I was reading a book called Running the Table, and I'm going to talk about this book another day. It reads like fiction. The funny thing is I read it, and at the end, it did like a where are they now kind of thing. And I'm like, where are they now? What do you mean, where are they now? It's fiction, right? And I realized that, no, this is a true story.
A true story. It was based on a true story.
I went back to page 1. I'm like, now I have to read it all over again because now it's a different
mindset.
Yeah. But there's an interesting part in the book where our hero, who is called Kid Delicious, was saying how he was somewhere, and I'm not sure it was Derby Classic or where he was, but he was saying how the Filipino players had made such a big splash at the event. And he turns to his friend and he says, watch, next week everybody's going to be shooting like that.
Yeah.
And he said the next week nobody could make a ball because they were all trying to mimic these players. So yeah, you new guys, just kind of, hang in there. It is a frustrating thing. It does pay off. I know when people
play people that are better than you if you can, that's one of the things that I think have helped me a lot. I particularly play with two guys, and they're two guys that have been playing for a lot longer than I have. I mean, each of them have been playing for at least 15 or 20 years. I'm starting to see myself finally catch up to them a little bit with practice, coaching, and everything. But in anything, I think we mentioned it in previous videos. It doesn't matter what game you play or whatever it is, playing against people that are superior to you, I think will definitely help elevate you. So,
and don't mistake practice and playing, because
I know.
Yeah, you don't call it a practice session when you show up and you've got a guy in front of you that is going to leave you in your seat. I'm not going to say any names, but there's a pro that I know, and his lessons, I would see him giving lessons every now and then, and his lessons were basically you playing 9-ball against him. And I'm like,
so he's basically like, So he's basically saying, "Watch me play." Watch me
Yeah,
play nine
yeah,
ball,
because
right?
he's running racks like crazy. I mean, this is a guy that he plays on a very high level, and not every good player is a good coach. But yeah, so you be careful that you're not sitting and watching somebody run racks and they're calling it lessons. So I just be careful about that.
You could watch that on YouTube if you want to watch somebody run racks, right?
Hey,
For free.
I learned as
Free,
much as the
so.
guy that he was teaching just by standing there and watching him run racks. So yeah, be careful of that.